Have you ever wondered how a single act of kindness could flip someone's entire world upside down? Sometimes the most powerful stories don't come from palaces or boardrooms, but from places where people barely have enough to survive. This is the story of Emily, a young woman who had almost nothing, yet chose to share the little she had with a stranger on the street. What she didn't know was that this choice would ignite a chain of events tied to her past and her future in ways she could never imagine. So stay with me until the very end, because the outcome of this story will move you. And before we dive in, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of our emotional stories. Emily Carter was only 19, but life had already placed on her shoulders the kind of weight most people couldn't imagine. She lived with her mother, Linda, in a rundown trailer on the edge of a small town in Ohio. The roof leaked whenever it rained, the floor creaked with every step, and the furniture was a mismatched collection of items either donated or bought at thrift stores. For most people, it looked like a place ready to collapse. For Emily, it was home. Every morning she woke up before sunrise, not because she wanted to, but because responsibility demanded it. Buses roared down the nearby highway, shaking the thin walls of their trailer like an alarm clock. She'd quietly slip out of bed, careful not to wake her mother, whose health had been declining for years. Linda suffered from chronic lung problems, and every winter, Emily feared the cold might finally take her away. Emily's daily mission was simple, but exhausting. Find odd jobs that could bring in just enough money to keep them afloat. One day it might be scrubbing floors at a neighbor's house, another hauling boxes at a discount store, or washing dishes at the diner on Main Street. The pay was always meager, the work always draining. But she kept going because she knew her mother depended entirely on her. Despite the hardship, Emily carried herself with a light that stood out. She was known around the neighborhood not for wealth or beauty, but for her ability to smile through the storm. "Better days will come," she often whispered to herself, repeating the words her mother always told her. And though she barely had food to put on the table, she somehow found the strength to encourage others. But things had reached a breaking point that week. The last of their money had gone to medicine for Linda, and their pantry was nearly empty. All that remained was a single slice of bread, slightly stale, wrapped carefully in a napkin. For Emily, that slice represented more than just food. It was survival. She planned to give it to her mother that evening, to at least ease the hunger until she figured out what to do next. Holding that bread in her hand, Emily's eyes filled with tears. "It's not enough, but it's all I have," she whispered. She tucked the napkin into her worn backpack and headed out to fetch water from a community spigot down the block. Carrying the bread with her felt safer than leaving it behind, where mice or ants might claim it. As she walked, the morning sun cast long shadows across cracked sidewalks and boarded-up houses, an everyday reminder of how poverty swallowed entire neighborhoods whole. At the water station, Emily filled her plastic jug, her mind wandering to her mother lying weakly in bed. She could already imagine the relief on Linda's face when she handed her that slice of bread later. It wasn't much, but it was something, and in their world, something was always better than nothing. On her way back, Emily's path took her past a block of old brick buildings. That was when she noticed him. Slumped against the wall, half hidden by shadows, sat an older man. His clothes were ragged, his hair matted, and his hands shook as though he hadn't eaten in days. His hollow eyes lifted as she passed, and with a voice barely above a whisper, he asked, "Miss, do you have anything to eat?" Emily froze. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her backpack. Inside, wrapped carefully in that napkin, was the only piece of food she had left, the one she'd promised to her mother. Her chest tightened. A battle erupted inside her. If she gave it away, her mother would go hungry that night. If she kept it, this man might not survive another day. She swallowed hard, feeling tears sting her eyes. For what felt like forever, she stood rooted to the spot, staring at him, then at the bag, then back at him again. Her heart pounded as though it was demanding an answer she didn't want to face. Finally, she knelt down, opened her backpack, and unwrapped the napkin. The slice of bread looked so small, so pitiful, yet in that moment it seemed like gold. "Here," she said softly, her voice trembling. "It's not much, but it's all I've got." The man blinked, stunned, then slowly reached out with shaking hands. When the bread touched his palms, his eyes filled with tears. He clutched it like it was a priceless gift. Why would you give this to me?" he asked, his voice breaking. Emily's lips curved into a faint smile, though her heart felt heavy. "Because you needed it more than I did." For a long moment he just stared at her, as if trying to memorize her face. Then, with desperation, he began to eat, devouring each bite as though it were the most delicious meal in the world. Emily watched quietly, fighting back the thought of her mother waiting at home with nothing. But as she turned to leave, the man lifted his head, his eyes shining with something more than gratitude. "Miss, your kindness won't be forgotten." Emily paused, unsure what to say. She simply nodded, offered a weak smile, and walked away, the weight of her choice pressing on her shoulders. She didn't know it yet, but that single act of compassion had already set in motion something extraordinary. And you? What would you have done in Emily's place? Would you have given away your last meal to a stranger, or saved it for your family? Share your thoughts in the comments, because what happens next in Emily's life will leave you speechless. Emily walked home with the plastic jug of water pressing into her arms, but the weight she felt was not just physical. Every step echoed the decision she had just made. She imagined her mother waiting, asking softly about dinner, expecting even that one slice of bread. Her stomach tightened as she wondered how she would explain. By the time she reached the trailer, the evening sky was already dimming into a pale orange. Linda was lying on the couch with a thin blanket over her knees. She lifted her head slowly when Emily entered. "Did you bring the bread, honey?" Emily set the jug on the counter and sat beside her mother. She could barely meet her eyes. Tears welled up as she whispered, "I gave it away." Linda frowned in confusion. "To who?" "To a man on the street. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days." There was silence. For a moment, Emily feared her mother would be angry, disappointed, or even devastated. But Linda simply reached out, touched her daughter's cheek, and smiled weakly. "You did the right thing, Emily. Sometimes the little we give means more than all the riches in the world. Don't regret it." Emily's eyes burned with tears. "But Mom, now you have nothing for tonight?" Linda squeezed her hand. "I've gone hungry before. What matters is that you didn't let your heart harden. That's worth more than food." Her words were comforting, yet guilt gnawed at Emily's chest. She lay awake late into the night, listening to her mother's shallow breathing, wishing she could provide more. The next day, Emily woke determined to find any kind of work. She wandered from one shop to another in the small downtown area, asking if they needed help. Most shook their heads. A few said they might need someone in a week or two, but not now. By noon, she was exhausted and discouraged. On her way back, she passed the same corner where she had seen the man before. He was gone. For some reason, that emptiness struck her more than if he had been sitting there. She felt as though her act of kindness had dissolved into nothing, leaving her only with hunger and doubt. Neighbors had already begun to gossip. As she filled her water jug, she overheard two women whispering behind her back. "Can you believe that girl gave away their last meal? Foolish. Some people don't know how to take care of their own." Emily kept her head down, cheeks burning. She wanted to shout that they didn't understand, that compassion wasn't foolish. But she stayed silent, carrying the heavy jug home. That evening, she confessed her fears to her mother. "What if I made a mistake, Mom? What if I was selfish thinking about being kind when we needed it ourselves?" Linda shook her head firmly. "Kindness is never selfish. It always comes back in ways you can't see yet." Emily tried to hold on to those words, though doubt still clouded her heart. 2 days passed. Hunger grew sharper. Linda's health faltered, her medicine less effective without food to strengthen her body. Emily searched desperately for jobs, washing cars, cleaning yards, anything. But offers were scarce and payment was meager. On the 3rd day, something unexpected happened. As Emily walked back from town, Clutching a bag of vegetables a grocer had given her out of pity, she saw a figure waiting near the old water spigot. It was the same man, but he looked different. His beard was trimmed, his hair combed. His clothes, though plain, were clean. He no longer looked like a man broken by the streets. He stood straighter, and when his eyes met hers, there was recognition, and something else she couldn't define. "Miss," he called softly, his voice steadier now. "I told you your kindness wouldn't be forgotten." Emily stopped, unsure. "I don't understand. How are you different?" He stepped closer, his gaze steady. "Because I'm not who you think I am. I wasn't out there by accident. I needed to know if there was still someone in this world willing to give when they had nothing. And you proved it." Her mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" The man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small card. He handed it to her. Printed neatly was his name, Richard Hayes, and beneath it, the logo of a large food distribution company she had heard about but never imagined meeting anyone from. Emily's breath caught. You're not homeless?" Richard shook his head. "I was once, a long time ago. I built my life back up, but I never forgot what it felt like to be invisible. So, sometimes I walk those same streets to see how people treat the ones society ignores. Most turn away. But you gave me everything you had." Emily stared at the card, her hands trembling. She didn't know whether to feel betrayed, angry, or relieved. "Why would you do that?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Because I needed to find someone genuine," Richard said. "And you are." Before she could respond, he added quietly, "I want to help you and your mother. Not out of charity, but because you showed me something rare. Real compassion." Emily's heart pounded. Was this real? Or was it just another cruel trick life was playing on her? She shook her head. "I can't accept handouts. I'm not looking for pity." Richard's expression softened. "This isn't pity. It's a chance. Meet me tomorrow at my office. Let me show you what I mean. Bring your mother if you can." Emily hesitated, torn between suspicion and a glimmer of hope. She thought of her mother's frail frame, the empty shelves in their kitchen, the endless cycle of rejection. Maybe, just maybe, this was the break they needed. That night, she told Linda everything. At first, her mother was silent, then smiled through tears. "Emily, sometimes God answers prayers in strange disguises. Don't be afraid to listen." Emily lay awake long into the night, staring at the cracked ceiling of their trailer. Could it be true? Could her one slice of bread really open a door to something she had never dared dream of? The next morning, she dressed in her cleanest blouse and worn jeans. With her mother at her side, leaning on her arm, she set out toward the address printed on the card. Neither of them knew that walking through those doors would reveal a truth about Richard and about Emily's own family that would shake them to their core. The morning air was crisp, carrying the smell of fresh bread from a nearby bakery, as Emily and her mother approached the tall glass building downtown. Compared to their small trailer, the skyscraper felt like another planet. Emily held Linda's arm tightly, both to steady her and to give herself courage. They entered the lobby, where polished floors reflected the sunlight streaming through wide windows. Receptionists in neat uniforms greeted guests with professional smiles. Emily felt out of place in her faded jeans and scuffed shoes, but she lifted her chin and walked toward the desk. "We're here to see Mr. Hayes," she said softly, handing over the card he had given her. The receptionist's expression changed instantly. "Of course, he's expecting you." She pressed a button on the phone, spoke quietly, and then guided them toward an elevator. As the doors slid shut, Emily caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. Her heart pounded. She still couldn't understand why someone like Richard Hayes wanted anything to do with her. The elevator opened onto the top floor, revealing a wide office with tall windows overlooking the city. Behind a large desk, Richard stood waiting. He was dressed in a simple gray suit, but his warm smile made him look less intimidating than the night before. "Emily, Mrs. Parker," he greeted them, stepping forward. "I'm glad you came." Emily helped her mother into a chair, then sat down herself, her hands twisted nervously in her lap. Richard took a breath, as if preparing himself. I know what I did may have seemed strange. Pretending to be homeless, it wasn't a game. I needed to remind myself of the world outside these walls, and I needed to see if people still cared. Emily nodded slowly, though her suspicion remained. And you think giving you my last piece of bread proves something? It proves everything, Richard said firmly. Because generosity from abundance is easy. Generosity from nothing, that's rare, and it changes people. Linda's voice, though weak, carried weight. You're saying my daughter's kindness changed you? Richard met her gaze. Yes, more than you know. He walked to a cabinet and pulled out a small wooden box. Setting it on the desk, he opened it to reveal photographs, old, worn at the edges. Emily leaned forward, curious. This is where it becomes complicated, Richard continued. He handed Emily a photo of a young woman standing outside a bakery, smiling brightly. This was my sister, Anna. She died many years ago. She was like you, Emily, always giving even when she had little. Emily studied the picture. The woman's eyes were kind, her posture confident. But what struck her most was how familiar she looked. She glanced at her mother. Linda's expression had changed. Her lips pressed tightly, her face pale. Richard noticed. You recognize her, don't you? Linda hesitated, then whispered, Yes. Emily turned sharply. Mom, what's going on? Linda swallowed hard. Anna was my friend. Before she passed, we worked at the same bakery when I was your age. She was the only one who helped me when I was pregnant with you. Emily's chest tightened. You knew her? You never told me. Tears welled in Linda's eyes. Because remembering her hurt too much. She was kind, but life was cruel. She died before you were born. I didn't want you to grow up carrying that sorrow. Richard's voice was gentle but steady. Anna used to tell me she dreamed of finding people who lived with that same kind of courage. People who gave even when they had nothing. When I saw you on the street, Emily, it felt like seeing her again. The room fell silent. Emily stared at the photograph, then at Richard, trying to make sense of it all. The connection felt unreal, yet undeniable. So, why bring us here? She asked finally. Richard leaned forward, his hands clasped. Because I believe your act of kindness wasn't just chance. It was fate. I want to help you, not with handouts, but with opportunity. I want to offer you a job in my company, a fair salary, health insurance for your mother, stability. You've already proven your heart. Now I want to see what you can do with your hands and your mind. Emily's breath caught. It was everything she had ever prayed for. Yet doubt lingered. Why me? There are hundreds of people more qualified. Richard shook his head. Skills can be taught. Character can't. And you, Emily, have character. Linda reached for her daughter's hand, her eyes shining with tears. Honey, this could be the answer we've been waiting for. Emily looked from her mother to Richard, torn between fear and hope. All her life, she had been told not to trust offers that seemed too good. But something in Richard's eyes told her this was different. Still, she hesitated. If I accept, what exactly would I be doing? Richard smiled faintly. Starting small, working in one of our bakeries, learning the business from the ground up, just like Anna once did. But with time, who knows? You could rise higher than you ever imagined. The weight of the moment pressed down on Emily. She thought of the trailer, the leaky roof, the empty pantry. She thought of her mother's weak frame, struggling each day. And then she thought of that single slice of bread, the choice that had led her here. Finally, she whispered, I'll do it. Richard's expression softened with relief. You won't regret it. As they left the office later, Emily felt dizzy with emotion. She had walked in fearing it was a trap, but now she carried a new sense of purpose. Her act of kindness had not only saved a stranger, it had opened a door to a life she never thought possible. Yet as they stepped onto the busy street, a strange unease tugged at her heart. For some reason, she couldn't shake the feeling that Richard knew even more about her past than he had revealed. And soon, that hidden truth would surface, changing everything she believed about her family. The following weeks were unlike anything Emily had ever experienced. Each morning, instead of rising in a cramped trailer and searching for odd jobs, she dressed in a clean uniform provided by the bakery and walked into a warm, bustling shop. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the air, and for the first time in her life, she felt she belonged somewhere. The work was hard, sweeping floors, stocking shelves, learning to operate the ovens. But Emily embraced every task with determination. Customers quickly noticed her sincerity. Unlike other clerks who rushed through transactions, Emily greeted everyone with a smile that came from deep within. She knew what it meant to feel invisible, and she refused to let anyone who walked through those doors feel the same. At night, she returned home to find her mother improving steadily. Linda's health, once fragile, grew stronger with proper care and nutrition. She even began helping with small chores around the trailer, humming softly as she worked. For Emily, watching her mother regain color in her cheeks was worth more than all the paychecks combined. But despite the blessings, Emily could not ignore the unease that lingered in her chest. Richard Hayes visited the bakery often, sometimes to check on operations, sometimes simply to speak with her. His gaze carried warmth, but behind it, Emily sensed a weight he had not yet shared. One evening after the bakery closed, Richard invited her to walk with him. The streets were quiet, the neon signs buzzing faintly as cars passed in the distance. Emily hesitated, but curiosity pushed her forward. "Emily," Richard began, his voice lower than usual, "I owe you more than honesty. There's something you need to know." She looked at him nervously. "What is it?" He exhaled heavily, as though carrying a burden for years. "When I first saw you, it wasn't just your kindness that struck me. It was your eyes. They reminded me of someone I lost long ago. My sister, Anna. She was more than my sibling. She was the heart of our family. And she carried a secret with her when she died." Emily's pulse quickened. "A secret?" Richard nodded slowly. "Anna fell in love with a man from a world far from ours. A man who didn't have money, didn't have status. My parents disapproved, of course. They forced her to end it, but she never stopped caring for him. I only discovered years later that she had a child she never told us about." Emily froze in place, her breath caught. "A child?" Richard's eyes glistened. "Yes, and when I saw you, something inside me knew. Your kindness, your spirit, even your face. It's like looking at her again. Emily, I believe you're her daughter." The words struck like thunder. Emily shook her head, backing away. "That's not possible. My mother, Linda, she raised me alone. She never mentioned—" "She wouldn't have," Richard interrupted gently. "Anna asked her to keep the secret, to protect you. Linda was her closest friend. She trusted her more than anyone." Emily's heart pounded. The world seemed to tilt, her vision swimming. "So you're saying my real mother was your sister?" Richard's voice softened. "Yes, which makes you my niece." Silence swallowed the street. Emily felt the ground slipping beneath her. All the years of hunger, of shame, of watching her mother suffer, and now she was being told she came from a wealthy family, that she had been part of the Hayes bloodline all along. Tears filled her eyes. "If that's true, why didn't you come for me sooner? Why let me grow up in poverty, watching my mother struggle?" Richard's face contorted with regret. "Because I didn't know. Anna kept it hidden. She feared our family's judgment, feared they would take you from her. I only found traces after she died, and by then, Linda had disappeared. I searched for years, but it was like chasing a shadow, until the night you handed me that bread." Emily's chest rose and fell rapidly. The piece of bread, the act that had seemed so small, was what led her here, to the truth about her own life. She whispered, almost to herself, "All this time, I never knew who I really was." Richard stepped closer, his voice thick with emotion. "You are Emily Parker, yes. The girl who sacrificed her last piece of bread for a stranger. But you're also Emily Hayes. You carry the blood of a woman who gave everything for love, and the strength of the woman who raised you. You're both." Emily covered her face with trembling hands. The revelation was too heavy, too unreal. When she lowered them, Tears streaked her cheeks. "What am I supposed to do with this?" "Live," Richard said simply. "Live with dignity. Live with courage. Don't let the past chain you. Let it free you. You are not defined by poverty nor by secrets. You're defined by the choices you make." They stood in silence, the weight of the truth settling between them. Emily's heart ached with confusion, but beneath the chaos, a strange peace began to take root. The questions of her past would never fully vanish, but perhaps they no longer needed to. The following Sunday, Emily sat beside her mother, her true mother in every way that mattered, on the porch of their trailer. The sun cast golden light across the yard, and the scent of bread from the bakery lingered on Emily's clothes. Linda looked at her daughter with soft eyes. "I suppose Richard told you." Emily's throat tightened. "He did. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me?" Linda took her hand gently. "Because I wanted you to grow up knowing love, not shame. It didn't matter how you came into this world. You were mine, Emily. From the first moment I held you, you were mine." Tears spilled freely down Emily's face. "You're the only mother I've ever needed." They embraced, holding on to each other as if to erase the years of struggle. And in that moment, Emily understood. Family wasn't about secrets or bloodlines. It was about the love that endured through everything. Weeks turned into months. Emily continued working at the bakery, growing in confidence and skill. Customers adored her, co-workers respected her, and Richard proudly watched her blossom into the woman he always believed she could be. But the greatest change was within Emily herself. She no longer saw herself as the girl from the broken trailer. She was the girl who had chosen kindness over survival, who had discovered her roots, but refused to be defined by them. She was, at last, whole. One evening, standing at the counter as the bakery closed, Emily looked out at the darkening sky. She thought of that single slice of bread, the choice that had changed everything, and with a steady breath, she whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." Because sometimes, the smallest act of kindness doesn't just feed a stranger. It rewrites destinies. And if this story touched your heart, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that compassion can change the world.